Hey, this is the Entertainment Advice Channel. What I want to talk about today is the topic of what makes a story great. So, for this video, I'm going to discuss the three fundamental things that is needed to make a story great. So, if you're interested in writing stories or you're just curious to what makes a story great, then this is the video for you. And I will explain it in a simple and straightforward way. So, even though it's unfamiliar topic, can understand it. So if you're interested in finding out what makes a story great, then watch this video in order to find out. So now I mentioned that, let's get started. So when it comes to what makes a story great, out of the first of the three main points, the first thing that makes a story great is simply good aesthetics. Now this one is probably going to be controversial because some people say, oh, you don't have to have good aesthetics and blah 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 blah. But the point of the matter is, I actually completely disagree. I think you have, well, not I think, you do have to have good aesthetics in some way, shape, or form, okay? Which means some degree of color, um, and just something visually appealing to look at in some way, shape, or form, okay? Which, whether you're making a movie, a TV show, a video game, you have to have a world that looks visually appealing and even characters who look visually appealing. Now, even though, of course, this is controversial because it gets on a topic of preference, and some people say what looks good to one person will look ugly to that person, and what looks great to that person will look ugly to the other person, yada yada. Yes, that is true. People do have different preferences, but there is definitely a fundamental system that can determine how good something is going to look for a massive audience. Because if you're making something for a massive audience, you obviously have to have a fundamental system that's going to determine how good it's going to be. Okay, no shit. So, you know, so if you have a fundamental system, you know, and of course, if you're making entertainment and a story, you obviously want as much people to watch it as possible. At least most people, for the most part, do. So obviously, you have to follow rules um, and principles that are obviously going to work with people. You know, the majority of people. So when it comes to aesthetics, aesthetics is definitely something you have to focus on, and you have to make things look as colorful as possible. And even if it's not colorful, like you're making a storyline that's more dark, like it's based on a dystopia or something like that, or something, it still has to have some degree of a visual appeal to it. It has to have something that makes it look interesting. Like a good example would be maybe a sunny sky or something, at least for the most part. Okay, a sunny sky, you know, maybe something that might look run down, but it has some degree of beauty to it. In other words, you just have to make something look visually appealing in some way, shape, or form if you want to create an interesting story, because that's what brings people into the story and gets people fascinated with it, or at least helps them really get immersed in it. It's what, when people are looking at something, it attracts them. And to be as specific as possible, it helps people become more passionate about the story. Because when something looks visually appealing, humans, of course, us being very visual creatures, um, you know, something that looks good can have a massive influence on us. And when something looks really good, to be even more exact, it really has a deep impact. So it helps create passion and makes people more likely to be interested in the story. Okay, or more like, for that matter, to be even more specific, it'll make them interested in the story. So that's the first point. Have good aesthetics in some way. Make it colorful. Make um, you know, as much as possible. You know, make it look really cool and stuff. Just try to have as much color as possible. Try to make it look upbeat for the most part, and also not just try to have as much color as possible. Try to make the characters look good. So, to sum it up, have good aesthetics. Okay, so that's my first point. Okay, the second point is when it comes to, I mean, how to create a good story is try to have a big world to it, because this one is also a very you know, I think could be a bit controversial, not as controversial as the first one, but it's definitely something that is needed for a good story. Is you have to have a massive world, okay, something to really get people into it, okay. Because when it comes to worlds that are massive, like for a good example could be Lord of the Rings, you know, you know, video games from the Final Fantasy series. Um, another one could be obviously, aside from those two examples, um, another one could obviously be maybe um, easily, if anything, Game of Thrones before it went to shit. Like things like that. Things that worlds that tend to have a very big world to them help make um, things very interesting to people, okay? Because there's a lot to do with it. If your world you're creating is very small and there's not much to it, it gets kind of boring, okay, to people. People want something that has a massive variety. If you have something that just only offers really something small like a city or even maybe one single place like a country or something, it can get boring. Okay? But if you have something that offers the ability for people to go to different places and so on and so forth, it helps for the most part, not all the time, because of course, like anything when it comes to creativity, there's always an exception to the rule. But when it comes to, like, of course, for the most part, it helps make it more interesting because there's more to do with it, and it helps create the sense of adventure in people, which will, of course, help really make them fall in love with the story, and as a result of making them fall in love with it, immerse themselves. They'll put their mind in the world and think to themselves, how would it feel to be in a world like this? Like that's exactly what I'm trying to get across here. So, in short, to sum things up, to be quite blunt and honest with you, if you really want to help make your make your audience really enjoy your story and feel really immersed in it and stuff, you need to have a really big world, okay? And if not really big, at least big, if anything. Don't, with different climates, different locations, like something that really helps really immerse them into it, okay? A big world, not just one place and that's it. It can get really boring for people if you just have the same world. Just like why is Grand Theft Auto so serious? So, I mean, so popular, specifically San Andreas and stuff like that. It's popular because of how big the world is, because there's so much to do with it. That's the example I'm trying to give here, okay? Compared to other GTA games that the world is not as big. So that's an example right there of why a bigger world helps create a better story for people. For whatever type of media you're making, like I was saying before, movies, TV shows, video games, try to create a big world. And that will help make people more interested in it. Okay? And that's my second point. Now, the third point, the third and the last point I want to make for this video, okay? The third and the last point that definitely um, there is to make is that when it comes to making a good story, um, the last point to make, you have to, um, if you're making a really great one, you have to come up with a very interesting premise for a story, like an interesting plot, in other words, okay? Try to make something that is actually going to interest people, okay? Like, try to make something that people are going to look at and say, this is actually interesting, okay? Like, something like a war breaking out or something, or along the lines of that is something that's going to be of natural interest to people, okay? War is very interesting to people, whether we like to admit it or not. Yes, we know it's wrong, but let's keep it real. It makes things damn well interesting. So try to come up with an interesting scenario, not just specifically saying it has to be a war, but like an interesting dilemma, okay? Like, to give an example, what I mean by coming up with an interesting plot, what I mean by one, you know, and even though of course people have different preferences, there is something that definitely can sum it up for the most part on what would make it from an objective level make a storyline interesting, which is have interesting stakes on the line. Okay, whether it could be a story about we're going to rescue, um, you know, um, maybe a princess or something or a woman, whatever. Or it could be something like another one could obviously be maybe you're trying to get a specific weapon, or you're trying to do this, you're trying to do that, you're trying to get this particular other thing, like maybe you're trying to get this particular technology. Make the stakes interesting. Like if he doesn't do this, the world's gonna come apart, and so on and so forth. Like trying to make interesting stakes that's actually gonna get people interested, and that is the truth. So anyway, this is my video, and this is advice I'm giving on how to make a great story so we can help make entertainment great again. So if you enjoyed this video, just remember to thumb this video up and hit the subscribe button. And this is all I have to say. And simply put, I'm out. So bye.